I just finished up with Xenosaga Episode I and it left me with so many questions that I needed to know, so I immediately jumped straight into the second title of this epic trilogy. The Xenosaga II subtitle, which I'm not even going to try to pronounce, is German for Beyond Good and Evil. This was a philosophical book that examines morality beyond simply being good or evil, black or white, which ties into some of the concepts presented in this game. The second title in the series was released 2 years after the first game and was developed by quite a few new staff members, most notably a new director, producer, and composer. As a result, in many areas the game takes a different direction and generally received a poorer reception than its predecessor. But regardless of how you feel about it, Xenosaga Episode II moves this tale forward and really must be played for full appreciation of the series. So what does it do right and where does all the criticism stem from? Let's take a look. The very first thing that I noticed after starting Xenosaga 2 was the massive change in its graphical style. Episode 1 featured a very anime style look and this has evolved into a more realistic appearance. Some characters such as Junior and Ziggy don't actually look that much different at all, while others look like they've had a huge makeover. Now I know this one comes down to personal preference, but I really didn't dig the new look for Shion, Cosmos and Momo. I don't know how to put it, they just look expressionless and weird, and this is something that I never got used to as I progressed through the game. I also felt that there was a serious lack of facial expressions. They seemed like strange dolls with a few facial features. I'm interested to know what you thought about the character design changes. Let me know in the comments. Another massive change was the audio. Perhaps the most widely renowned music composer ever, Yasunori Mitsuda, was the genius behind Xenosaga 1's composition. His departure this time around was clear, as the musical style also took a new direction, with the overall soundtrack being very hit and miss. There just weren't any tracks that really grabbed me this time around, and this was disappointing. By far the best part of Xenosaga 2 is the continuation of this epic story. It's also complicated as hell, so don't even think about jumping into this one without having played the first. I'm not going to go into the details about the story in fear of spoilers, but Xenosaga 2 is set shortly after the events of the first game and feature all of the original main characters, plus Jin, who is Shion's older brother. The main focus this time around is the history and conflicts of Junior and Albedo and how they fit into the whole story surrounding the Zohar. The number one reason that you're going to want to play this game is to progress the story, even though I thought that its delivery left a lot to be desired. If you've played the first game, you'll know that the story to gameplay ratio leans heavily towards story, but in that game I was always interested in the scenes that I was watching. This time the pacing was noticeably bad. There were also many lengthy, slow-paced, dialogue-driven scenes, and this was particularly evident in the first 5 hours of the game. Another issue with the story delivery is the voice acting. This time around we have many new voice actors, which was a huge shame, as I thought the Xenosaga 1 voice casts were great. Some of the voices were just annoying, and others just seemed so void of personality, and this resulted in some scenes being a lot less interesting than they could have been.
Thank you very much. I am happy to be of service.
It also doesn't help that a lot of the characters really seem to have no facial expressions when they should. I guess what I'm trying to say is that the epic story is still there, but I just wasn't as engaged as I was with the first game. There were loads of awesome mechanics in the Xenosaga 1 combat system, and this time around many of these core features are back, but with a twist. Overall, I really liked what the combat system attempts to do, even if it did have its fair share of issues. Here you have a turn-based system allowing you to control 3 characters at a time. What I really liked is that you can switch characters in and out during battle, which gives a lot more incentive to use all of the characters. New to the system is the stock mechanic, which allows you to guard and in turn stock up your attacks so you can unleash more powerful combos in the future. As an alternative to using your stocks to string together attacks, you can also perform a powerful double attack with an ally. This was a cool idea, but I never felt it necessary to use due to using stocks for combos being a much more effective way to deal the massive damage. Character boosting also makes a return, but this time there is a boost gauge for your party as opposed to individual characters. Once it fills up, you can boost a character in to take the next turn. This is especially important when utilizing the combo system, which is Xenosaga 2's most significant new feature. To put it simply, your characters can attack 3 zones of an enemy, A, B, or C. If you string together multiple attacks in a row based on the enemy's zone weaknesses, such as A, B, then they will break, allowing you to launch them in the air and combo for massive damage. This is pretty cool, as finding which characters will be stronger against a particular enemy and then finding how to break them, then unleashing massive combos works really well. I've only touched on the main mechanics here, there are more which really does make this combat system quite complicated. If you can't get your head around knowing which characters to use for which battle and the ins and outs of stringing combos together, you're going to be in Struggle Town, as Xenosaga 2 will throw many challenging battles your way. Personally, once I got the hang of things, I enjoyed it, but there were some problems, and that is, to do massive damage, you'll have to spend a few turns simply guarding to fill your stock gauge, and this can really slow the flow of battle. Random enemies also take way too long to defeat, as you need to spend time stocking, then unleashing on a single enemy, then stocking again, then unleashing again, and so on. I often felt that these random encounters really needed to be adjusted. Now, it wouldn't quite be Xenosaga without giant mechs. This time around, the eggs have been replaced by ESs, and once again, you'll have the opportunity to fight inside them. The big difference this time is that the battle is either your characters versus the enemies, or your party of ESs versus the enemy. There's no jumping into mechs mid-battle. This choice was fine, and I actually preferred how some of the dungeons were designed to be worked through both on foot and in your ES. What I didn't like was the ES combat system itself. I just discussed how the regular combat was complex. Well, the ES battles are the complete opposite. They are overly simple with very few options at your disposal. You basically just attack an enemy with regular attacks until your EC gauge eventually fills up, allowing you to unleash some slightly more powerful attacks. There's also no customizing your ES's weapons, attacks or armor, and I felt this entire system was a massive step backwards. There were loads of customization options in the first Xenosaga. Your stats, techs, other spells, skills, equipment, and this was great. In Xenosaga 2, every bit of customization is done through a skill system. There are 4 levels of skills, each with several classes, and these can be learnt through using skill points and class points received from battle. There is quite a lot of choice here, however, all of your characters have access to the exact same skills, and this was disappointing as there is no sense of individuality. Many of these skills are initially locked out, and I'll admit that finding new skills provided me with a great sense of accomplishment. In fact, if it wasn't for unlocking skills as a reward, then I probably wouldn't have bothered attempting all of the side quests, as most of them are tedious, repetitive, and, well, frustrating, such as washing windows. I'm not even joking. Like I said before, you're able to switch between all characters in battle, but the ones that don't finish up in your party will unfortunately not receive any skill points, which was a poor design choice. This is especially annoying since it requires an excessive amount of grinding, and I mean excessive, to learn the most powerful level 3 and level 4 skills. While this skill system worked well enough, it still wasn't even close to providing the level of customization that there should have been. I mean, you can't even customize your character's basic tech attacks or equip them with weapons or armor. Not only this, but there aren't even shops in the game. If you want to stock up on items, you're going to have to grind for it. All of this was a massive step backwards. The fact that Xenosaga Episode II is set smack in the middle of the series means that it's a must-play title if you're planning to play through the Xenosaga series. Here, the saga progresses quite a bit. It answers many of the questions that we had from the first, while creating many more mysteries that set the foundation of the epic conclusion. For story reasons alone, Xenosaga Episode II is worth playing, and while I wasn't quite as hooked on its delivery this time around, I still got a lot of enjoyment out of it. I'll also praise the battle system for what it was trying to do. There's a lot of depth here with some good ideas, but also some flaws that make the system feel like a chore at times. Xenosaga 2 also changed things up a lot in terms of its character design, audio direction, and voice acting, and personally, I didn't dig it, but this one comes down to personal preference, as there's probably some out there that did like it. However, I did feel that the lack of customization and the step backwards with the ES battles is something that is not so easily forgiven. 2 games down, 1 to go. I've just started playing the finale for the first time in my life and can't wait to see how things conclude. What did you think of Xenosaga Episode 2? Do you agree with what I said? Let me know in the comments. This was Hellfire RPGs, thanks for watching. Stay tuned for an Episode 3 review and a Xenosaga Know the Facts video coming soon. Also, if you liked this, hit like and sub for more RPG content. It helps out a lot. See you next time.